She's a kuchipudi dancer. But how many of you like Bollywood movies? Movies, yeah? Then she's somebody you really need to know because she happens to be the CHRO for Sony Picture Networks in India, right? So somebody you should try and catch up for the next movie that's coming up. Lastly, I'm going to request Abhishek Humbert to please come up on stage. Abhishek has the distinction of being one of the youngest entrepreneurs out of the IIMs. He's out of IIM Bangalore, right? So he is going to represent the generation that's lately coming into the workforce. And whilst he's sitting at the corner, right, aptly so, but he's going to be hopefully bringing in a lot of challenges and contradictions to us. But what Abhishek does is an entrepreneur. He started his venture called Godera, primarily in the space of volunteering and CSR. So ladies and gentlemen, a big round to my panelists as we kick it off. You need something? Okay. All right, so interesting topic, and I think I want to try and, it's a vast topic, but I want to try and anchor it around 3 or 4 things. And for the benefit of the audience, we're going to try and look at multi-generational diversity from an engagement standpoint, anchoring around 3 or 4 things. One, we're going to really look at how is communication changing in organizations, how you are communicating with employees, as also how are you listening to your employees. So that's the first piece we really want to unravel and unpack a bit. The second we want to look at is really around the space of work and how is work and meaning making really changing in the organization. Right? Connected with that is then, of course, the work environment. How is the work environment getting shaped to be able to take care of the first 2? And lastly, we're going to go into the whole space of talent to really think about what's changing from a talent standpoint, whether from a reward standpoint, whether from a growth, succession, developing talent standpoint. So these are the 3 or 4 things that we plan to really unpack with our panelists. And we will bring in the audience. So please keep thinking as you're listening to the panelists around these areas, because we want to be able to use the next 40 minutes, try and really make it engaging, because we have the pressure to keep you awake, right? So before I really go in, I think to a warm-up of question, right? So talking about engagement, Abhishek, what's on your 2018 engagement list for yourself? What are you going to do to stay more engaged for yourself personally?
So I think, my list is to volunteer at least once a month. So I think the biggest learning of my life has come through going out and meeting different kinds of stakeholders and volunteering. Mm-hmm. And, that starts from IIM days, actually. So, as a student at IIM, a lot of these companies came to campus to recruit us and had a slide on engagement. And, the only reason we saw that slide was because it was compulsory. And you had pizza boxes outside. Yeah. So, the only memorable engagement experience for me was, volunteering during my orientation there. And that's what I would want to do in 2018 and got all my employees to do it as well.
Lovely. Great. Thank you for that. Coming out of campuses, I think the only slide they want to see is the vitamin M slide, right? And that's what I do. When I go to campuses, the second slide I show is what is the total rewards approach, right? What is the number? And then I clearly tell people, those of you who believe you need to walk out now, this is it. This is now, and then you could go ahead with it, right? So Smriti, what's on your list from a personal engagement standpoint?
Yeah, so it's a little bit more selfish than Abhishek's, but it has to do with fitness, and health. And I'm going to justify it by saying that, when they say in the aircraft, right, that, you got to put the oxygen mask on yourself before your child. Yep. So, I think if you're fit and healthy, then, you can do so much more. So, well, that's my
fitness for you. Munch, right. What's on your personal engagement list for 2018?
Right. So for me, I've been told that I'm a tough boss from the feedback from my team. So this year, I try to be mindful. I try to remind myself to recognize and appreciate the work done by my team on a more regular, on a more vocal basis. So I'll try to say thank you every day.
All right. Wish you all the best on that one. Looking at you, how could anybody think that you are like hard taskmaster?
Oh, 2 of them are sitting there.
Well, I'll catch up with them offline. Right, Amreen, what's on your engagement list?
So maybe I will just kind of say in two spheres, right? And maybe they all connect together. See, one is if I look at the work environment, and which is very much related to the subject of conversation today. But I do believe that what matters the most in today, all the more, is the managers becoming leaders. So it's not just
so we'll get to that. What's on your personal
but my
engagement
personal
list?
this thing is to be engaged with the managers, and I want to also, I think, use my influence, because I'm a yoga practitioner, and I want to see that how I see a lot of value in that, and I want to see that how I can take that to my managers, okay, and use that effectively to kind of
Great. So there are two
bridge.
people with fitness here. So let's move on to our topic around engagement. So one of the things we're really starting to see with the multiple generations coming into the workforce is how organizations are communicating with employees and what listening mechanisms are being put into place. And we're starting to see a manifestation of big changes around that. So Manchit, let's go to you first to say your organization does a fair amount of work with different organizations. So what are some of the challenges that you're seeing in the space of communication with the multiple generations now in the workforce, right?
Right.
I mean, professional services companies almost like mine have 75% millennials in already. So what are you seeing?
So my organization has about 75% millennials as well. And I think sometimes I'm in this very ironic situation where just a couple of months back, I had a Gen Z. You have heard of Gen Z? They come after the Gen Y, right? I had a Gen Z who come to me on a one-on-one discussion complaining about a Gen Y manager to a Gen X.
That doesn't really happen, right?
Right. So that is the kind of situation that I find myself on a daily basis. And so this multi-generational communication problem is real. Some of the things that I've seen personally witnessed myself is like, for example, I think we have managers, just to add on to Amarin's point, who are managers. So they like to be use their authority and hierarchy to get things done, right? So when they talk to Gen Y or Gen Z, they say, do this. Then the Gen Y will ask, why should I do this? Then they will just say, you do it because you're a professional. Just be professional, right? So the answer of why or the purpose wasn't really there, right? So that is a source of disengagement. So another communication issue that I notice as well is as a technology organization, we use technology or tools to help us become more agile. So we use collaboration tools like Slack or Microsoft Teams or Trello. And what I notice is that the Gen Ys, they take on these tools in a very natural manner. They just go and they just use it on a daily basis, no question asked. Whereas managers or more senior employees tend to still prefer more face-to-face meeting kind of collaboration. So sometimes that create collaboration issues at work as well.
Okay, so Amreen, you're part of a technology organization with a fair amount of, I'm hoping Gen Z now stepping in aggressively. What are you seeing some of the challenges around communication in your organization?
So I think one, while I do, before getting into the direct question which you are asking, I think there are a lot of things which have changed, with the millennials and the different kind of people that we have across Gen X, Y, and the Z. But there are certain things which have not changed. While the mode of communication or the words that they may choose may change, but there are certain things I think has not changed. They do always want to have a sense of purpose. In IT situations, what happens is there is a lot of mundane work that we all have to do. The unfortunate part of it is that the youngsters, when they come in, they are full of ideas. They want to do very different things. They want to, just be ahead of technology, but they have to deal with the mundane work as well. So I think what really is required or what is needed or a challenge for us to deal with is that how do you bring the sense of purpose of, while doing the mundane things? Or is there any other alternative platforms that you can bring in to bridge that gap? And I think what we are doing, and if you want, I can probably give some certain examples at what we are doing. But for communication itself, like for instance, we're using Facebook at workplace very effectively now. So I think it just kind of has brought in a platform which is readily available and using so effectively to bring the entire organization together, whether it is with different units or at an organization level.
Okay, so I think very interesting point that both of you talked about is really the advent of technology into communication, right? Both listening technologies as well as communication technologies. I want to come to you, Smriti, to say, with multiple generations in the workforce, I think her situation or my situation, because of a professional services organization, we to an extent blessed because there's an early uptake of newer technologies, right? But you, I'd like to believe, would have experienced a fair mix of generations in the organization. And when you bring in technology aggressively, does it, to an extent, create a sense of exclusion for a few unknowingly? What is your thinking around that?
So if I can just give some context. So Sony Pictures Networks, our engagement scores are really high, and they have been high for the last 4 years that we've been doing surveys. So it's 80-81%, and we've been recognized on a lot of best employer lists and places to work for women and so forth. So I'm going to speak from that lens and that experience and what has sort of worked for us. So one reason that I think we are where we are is because there's been a single-minded focus on driving a values-based organization, and everyone across generations appreciates, I believe, the same things. And I don't think that has really changed. So respect, transparency, honesty, open workplace, performance orientation, all of that I don't believe has changed. And if your leadership and organization actions are aligned to what you're saying, on the board, these are your values, etc., then I think everyone across generations is able to relate to it. On your point of communication and technology, yes, obviously this is the generation of Twitter, and attention spans were always a little less in the corporate world, I believe, but now they're even lower. So I think communication, one has to be succinct and crisp, and I think they take the current generation is obviously a lot more interested in technology, and therefore. When you have applications where they can quickly sort of, apply for leave or, do many things that are in the workplace, from a productivity perspective, I think they value that. Is that a make or break for engagement? Probably not. But from a communication perspective, I think there's just a far more, Facebook at work, for example, we're working on something, a Yammer tool that will help these employees also, they're a lot more social group. But where we are today, we don't have that, but we're still a highly engaged workforce. Yeah. The other change I see in the current generation is, their sense of purpose is a lot about being outside of themselves. So a lot of focus on social issues and, what can I do to impact the world. They're just a far more collaborative generation than previous. So I think if you have a really good CSR strategy, then that, in my view, dovetails into your engagement strategy, and that sense of pride that they get from, the organization doing work in the social space, I think is far more than previous generations.
Thank you very much for that, Smriti. I think you've created a beautiful segue for me to actually go to Abhishek, right? So I think, what are you seeing with organizations that you're working with in India or outside of India, really in the space of volunteering and CSR, and how does this whole space of volunteering help the engagement agenda and accelerate the engagement agenda?
Sure, and I think it's almost like a marketing pitch for me, but
a half volley, hopefully.
So yeah, I think volunteering, it was more from a personal experience at I'm the most memorable experience where I knew all my batchmates by first name was during the volunteering thing, even though they say always do networking during your MBA. And post that also we have seen, we work with different kinds of companies. So we work, with an Amazon or a Genpact or a Novartis, and all of these companies, the HR typically would struggle with different things. So you want engineers to have more team bonding. They are individual contributors. There is high attrition. You want more empathy. We, for example, work with, let's say, pizza delivery guys, and you want them to have more empathy towards your consumers. So all of these problem statements somehow get, tagged and linked and, solved using, volunteering through different things. And, we have now our clients, typically the managers don't take their team for dinners, but take them to a volunteering event. And I think by the end of it, that's probably the only event which they go back and tell their families that this is what the company did, or this is what I did, and you get to know people from different domains and levels inside the company. Also, in terms of just pure stats, and there are only two things which employees share good about their companies generally. So one is all the job openings, and second is their volunteering and social experiences. So I think that again from a company perspective makes a lot of sense. And just tying up the technology piece, and technology is always an enabler, and you just want something which is very fast and simple and reliable, and that technology just enables that to happen. And at Goodera, as in we just know volunteering from an engagement perspective, we have about 300,000 employees volunteering on our platform, and that ties up very closely with the CSR strategy for companies. So there are in India, for example, 20% of India's CSR capital is managed on the Goodera platform, about 1,500 crores a year. And the ROI of CSR from a pure volunteering perspective is probably the highest that we have seen amongst a lot of different initiatives. So I think volunteering is something which across the globe companies are doing. Just 70% of millennials today volunteer at least one day a year. And the whole notion, what our parents or grandfathers did in terms of going to a temple or a church or offering services now happening through volunteering from a millennial perspective. So I think there are different aspects to it, but I'll just say volunteering is probably the most probably the best way of engaging all sorts of employees across levels and domains.
Cool. So I think clearly from my perspective, I look at this whole space of communication with the multiple generations that are coming in, things are changing, right? I mean, some of us, Generation X or generation, baby boomers who've been in HR for whatever, fossil years, right? We remember in early days, engagement was fun on the floor, right? Do some games, do some activities, do some that. And I think today the context of that is changing, right? We're really engaging with our employees virtually. We have listening that's happening on the chatter that's happening in the organization, proactive strategies that are being implemented, and the whole space of volunteering is a space of really people wanting to give back and contribute. I want to go back to the audience out here and see what have you seen in your organizations or anecdotally heard about in adjoining organizations of what has really worked for them from a communication standpoint. So any effective strategy that they have seen around employee communication or listening. Anybody in the audience? This is your opportunity to be part of the panel. As I said, you're going to learn as much from the panel as from each other. So who's got something to share with us? Go ahead. That's another Abhishek in the room. You got the box.
Yeah. My name is Abhishek. I represent a company called NERL, National E-Repository Limited, which is an NCDEX company, and I was heading HR for NCDEX. One of the programs which we did was Mandi visits. Basically, we are a commodity exchange, and so a group of people were sent to Mandi.
Mandi is a market?
Mandi is a market where the actual commodity trading happens. So most of the support groups, other than business, usually don't get an opportunity. And when we started, those 7 days were the most engaged days for those people, because they started learning a lot among themselves about the market, about the business, and they got to know each other so well. So I think that one Mandi program has helped us grow a lot, and bringing people together, because what is engagement? As long as they find the workplace to be a good place to be, and I think that worked very well for us.
Very good. Thank you for that, Abhishek. I think one of the things that I have experienced is memories are created when either you are under extreme stress or you're extremely happy, right? And some of us remember through our college or MBA the amount of stress we went through and the bonding that we got created in the process of that, or when we were with friends at really happy times and we were really going crazy mad doing things. Those become memories to an extent. Let's move forward. I think I want to tilt the conversation now forward. We talked a bit about purpose and work and meaning making. Clearly with a different generation, what work means for different generations is different, right? For the earlier generations, it was a source of livelihood. For others, it was opportunity to leave a legacy, right? For the millennials, it's an opportunity to learn and just contribute in the here and now. So what are you starting to see? Let's go to you, Smriti. What are you starting to see with these changes, and how is your organization responding to the changing needs of what work does mean for them?
Yeah, I mean, I think what I'm seeing is, aside from the social side, that the sense of purpose, I think they're looking for an opportunity to implement more ideas. They are definitely a little bit more risk-taking. So previously, where you wanted to really work with an organization for several years and then grow and then go to the next level, I don't think this generation is that much driven by that, and they're ready to take risks earlier as well. Contrary to some popular beliefs that this generation is not serious, I don't think it's about not being serious. It's about how they have grown up. They have a lot more world exposure, and therefore they want to experience a lot of things in a short time. And I believe that if the organization is able to create those experiences for them inside the company, then they will stay. And we don't have an attrition issue of that workforce. So I think as long as you're encouraging them to give their ideas, contribute more, take risks, and you create a culture where all of that is encouraged, I think they will find that purpose.
Okay. So, Amreen, coming to you, right? In the world of instant gratification, right? I mean, these are the folks that are coming in have got most things even before they thought they wanted it, because that's the way the parents made up for their absence at home, right? Assuming they are both working parents. And then they come into the workforce where there are rules and norms, and you HR people make all these policies that have to be followed. And this is not what I enjoy doing, right? Like you mentioned some time back, saying there is some mundane work. What are approaches then to engage with this workforce, and what have you done from your organization standpoint?
A lot of things that can be done, and what we have done. For instance, we have created a platform, we call it Brainbox. Okay? Brainbox. Okay. So while they do maybe a lot of mundane work, but we have to give them a way to voice their creative side of it, right? They are very observant, and I must say that they want to give back. They want to have that sense that that they are part of the larger organization, and organization is valuing what they are working for. So we created this brain box, and you would be amazed that, and of course we did a lot of branding, and we tried to kind of take it through the managers, otherwise directly, a lot of push. But the value that they have brought to the end customer is amazing, because the usage of that is about, I'm very happy with it, that about 65 to 70% of the organization has contributed through the brain box. Mm-hmm. Now, that's a great, engagement, because they're bringing it together. The second thing is, I think, to bring the millennials and the Gen X and everybody together, we had a very novel idea. I think what we did was, very recently, maybe just a week back, what we did was that created a forum where, the old and the new came together and worked literally over 2 days off-site, where they worked on creating chatbots and, a lot of technology solutions. So the people who had no idea, in the sense that they have moved ahead and they are now part of sales and delivery and management, they feel little alienated from technology. We combined them with, very bright youngsters and gave them a very me time together, where they created, solutions literally over 6 hours or 8 hours of time, which, break all barriers between them. First of all, the millennials knew that Gen X is not as boring, right? They were like spending a lot of time together, partying together, but they delivered. The sense of delivery and sense of accomplishment brought them all together. So that is, I think, another thing which worked very well. CSR, I think, I don't want it to become like a CSR session, but at our organization, it has worked beautifully well, where, we have used it, the platform and the people, in kind of taking it to another level. So I think that really has helped.
Mitch, can I just add one more?
I'll just come to you. I want to try and leverage on some of your experience and work that you've done with organizations. And you've done work in the region, right? So which is beyond just India. But are you starting to see distinctions in the region of what work means for different generations? And what are you starting to see that organizations are doing some creative or innovative things to really make this whole thing about purpose or the work being relevant to different generations?
So I come from Singapore, Malaysia, where I just spoke to Sriti just now, where it's usually hard to get people to speak up. And what I learned through my own experience and what Sriti has shared with me is over here is the complete opposite. So everybody talks at the same time, right? So I think those are if you like, the regional differences. But I do believe there is something common that cuts across different cultures, different regions. I think the talk around purpose being more important, I think it happens everywhere. And CSR, I think in other parts of the world, Southeast Asia, for example, China, for example, even, it's becoming an important agenda. I have a client who have employees who come to her and insist that they allocate time every alternate weekend to volunteer. They insist, So I think from the management, from the company perspective, what we have to do very well is to really listen, to be open. Maybe in India, most people wouldn't have qualms or hesitation to come up and say, I want this. Whereas in other parts of the world, sometimes we have to use methods to coax, to draw the ideas and the wants out of the employees. And the kind of things that we do are, for example, an anonymous feedback platform that allows people to say what they want without having to worry about repercussions or whatever that they perceive to be repercussions. One experiment that we ran before was actually, we actually used an anonymous platform and asked a very brave question. We posted a question out there to ask employees to answer, I wish my CEO knew, ... fill in the blanks. How many of your companies would dare to take this experiment? Come talk to me, right? So, and the amazing thing was that in an organization where nobody talks to anybody, through this method, over 7 days, we get half the company to participate voluntarily. We didn't say you have to answer, but half the people participate. And not only that, the platform also allowed them to vote on each other's comments or ideas. So in a way, it's like crowdsourcing, So and in that 7 days, on average, every single employee have voted on 80 other people's ideas. So all in all, we have 10,000 data points to tell us what's going on the ground. And it's validated in the sense that there is a peer voting mechanism going on that tells you this is a really serious problem. This is something that's really good, that's really happening because, a few hundred people agree that it is important, right? So in our part of the world, we have to really be very proactive in the way we listen to employees.
Right. Sorry, you're making a point, Smriti. Go ahead.
Yeah, so just on purpose, I forgot to mention that, for this generation, I think work-life balance is also one big part of the reason why they sort of join companies. And we do a lot of, engagement initiatives throughout the year. So engagement, health, wellness, financial, physical, spiritual. There's something or the other that keeps going on. And to that extent, I think the engagement isn't that much virtual. It is definitely... and I believe, and maybe I'm old school, but I believe that engagement still needs to be those types of things where they have an opportunity to interact with their colleagues and, with the company in a face-to-face kind of a manner. And I think that, in my view, also cuts across cultures because, when I was in Singapore with NBC, we did that with the employees and, it's one thing that cuts across every culture, every barrier, I think. So, again, the old school principles of doing a lot of stuff on the floor and being on the floor, I think, have not really changed.
All right, get that. So I'm going to wrap this one around work. And I think in addition to what I've just heard, right, around the need for some of the instant gratification, I liked your idea around brain box. I liked your stuff on what the CEO should know, really creating channels of open communication within an organization. I think one of the things jump out for me from my experience, one is we in Accenture do a live event. So anytime we want to change something, either a policy process or we want to start something new from a work format standpoint, we do a live event which is technically a 2 or 3 day event which is opened up across a particular business line globally. And you have leaders who are responsible to come in particular slots across the 2 days, 24/7, because you're operating out of 50 different countries. The first day is really around the space of ideation. People give ideas. Day 2 is really around voting of the ideas. And day 3 is when you actually summarize those ideas and decide the way forward, saying, well, we want to introduce these 2 talent segments, or this is a new business vertical, and these are things we will focus on. So that's one idea that jumped up to me. The other one really is around, there is a big need, and there's a big need coming through across the millennials of what I call as the whole gig workforce. People do not see themselves doing mundane work if it's not relevant to what they want to do. So when you are most passionate, you don't really think about engagement. I mean, our hobbies, we don't really think about engagement, right? So the belief is, what do we need to do as an organization that people are working on the intersection of their passion and strengths, right? And therefore getting to what their aspirations are. So what we have done is we have basically opened up a platform where everybody can sign up to say what are they most excited about doing. And you as a manager in any part of the world could open up a particular piece of a project. And if I have the slack and capacity, I could sign up to that project, right? Now that is right now in its early infancy of last 6-7 months. It's playing out. But fast forward this, right? A couple of years into it, where work I do not assign work to you. You start choosing the work you want to do, and truly democratize how work is getting allocated and what you do, right? So those are some examples that quickly jump up to me. I want to, in the interest of time, move quickly to the last piece, really around talent. And Amrin, coming to you, what are you seeing some of the interesting things that you guys are doing from a talent standpoint, right? Really around growing talent, developing talent, learning to engage the multi-generational workforce.
So at various levels, I think just to take your point forward, I think we are using that as a tool for development as well. So a very similar program that we are working on right now, I don't think it is like really on the floor, but we are ideating it and putting it into place, is, letting all the, so while people have to do the mundane and whatever else, but there is an urge to do more, so give them a platform. We are creating one internally where they can choose, on specific ideas what they want to work on and what we want, we think that are interesting things to do, so they can choose and they can work. So literally, the same thing. But I think what we are also allowing them is an open platform to learn. So instead of, us determining that what would be the training programs that they should attend, what we are doing is that and there is a whole lot of learning which is available on Amazon and otherwise. So how do you keep that open for the people to choose what they want to learn? And keep their passion in mind. It is not always the organization need, but also the personal need for the person to develop. And at that, because I think what really goes well with this generation is the flexibility. So while the older generation was very careerist, in the formal sense, I think here what they want is the room to explore. And that comes with the flexibility that you can provide them to choose what they want to do.
Fair.
So we've opened up that channel. We are not, constraining them that, okay, this is the program which is meant for you. So there is a lot of, e-learning is also passé. So there is a, lot of YouTube learning, a lot of Amazon learning, and then you learn it and the company is there to help you grow in that direction and subscribe to it also.
So I'm going to go to you, Abhishek, right? And I want to nudge you a bit. Train me, feed me, take care of me, and finally, let me go. Now, for somebody who's invested so much of time, energy, and money into you, and then you say, let me go, what's really what's really working on your minds of the generation?
Yeah, so, I'm also like a millennial employee, but also run a company and hopefully with more than 80% millennials. So I think that's a huge risk. I think, just from a notional perspective, as in, even if we join as an intern, we want to do the job of a CEO. Yep. And be, thought of as a CEO within peers and stuff. So I think that becomes and we don't want to be told, we want to learn stuff. So, and again, coming back to a volunteering perspective, but, I think what you've seen is if employees go and volunteer at an NGO, they can actually act like a CEO and actually move the needle for the NGO there and get the confidence that, they are actually contributing to something. And once they get the confidence that they are contributing to something, I think that just flows in across their daily life. And similarly, we have seen companies which would have like a value quiz just to make employees learn values, and that's not how things are done and stuff. So I think also from a volunteering perspective, we've seen a lot of photo op volunteering happening, and that's not again how it's done. So I think it needs to have substance. It needs to be learned, and I think it's a choice. From a bargaining power perspective, is now with the employee and not with the company. So that's the bottom line.
So I want to go to the audience. We are running out of time, but I do want to be able to take at least one question. If you can get the mic, get the box. Can we get the box out there? No, don't worry. It won't hit you. Yes, let's see it. Fabulous.
Not very successful. Thank you. Hello everyone. I am Kanika from McCain Foods. I'm sure you would have heard about Smiles and Fries that McCain has. So we heard the panelist members talking a lot about various activities that we can do to engage the millennials. What would be interesting for me especially is to know a couple of things that you have seen to engage the millennials through reward and recognition. What is this generation really looking at in terms of recognizing on what is it that engages them more in terms of recognition, and what are the kinds of rewards that they would be more interested in than maybe the previous generation and the generations before that.
So, Smriti, you want to take that, and then I could add to that a bit. Go ahead.
Sure. So, I think, so we have something called an innovation award, and we do a lot of stuff around innovation, ideas. There's an idea lab where, different ideas are sort of rolled up the chain, and then something is selected, etc. I think that's one space which they really value. The second is in the previous generations, there wasn't that much of acceptance of peer feedback and peer recognition. I feel that peer recognition has gone up significantly, as well. That's on the recognition bit. So
maybe I can just add one more thing that, so we have created, like for instance, a high performance club. I think one important thing that we give is all the conventional rewarding mechanisms remain, but what we have added to it is that you choose what you wish to do, a choice of, a project that you wish to work on. And I think that choice goes a big, step ahead. Or, people do, like to spend time with the CEO. So give them exclusive time with the CEO. So to, kind of maybe exchange ideas or just kind of be there and get, stimulated. So I think those are the two things which have worked very well for us, I would like to add.
I just want to add also that, in terms of the rewards, etc., that you give them, so what we've gravitated towards is more employee experiences. So, for example, something that they've done really well, you get a, a night out at Air in Four Seasons, which is like, $100 voucher or whatever. So I think the nature of the awards, the sport awards, etc., is also shifting towards more the experience that person can have rather than just, your standard stuff that we used to do.
Just to round that question off, respond from my perspective, I think you talked about experiences, and I think what we are trying to do as an organization is extend the experience not just to the individual, but to whomsoever they want to include as a part of that, right? So whether it's a spa experience or it's a holiday experience or a dining experience, because we do want to acknowledge that there is a life that you have which is beyond us at work. And we want to be able to thank and recognize those significant people that are part of your life, whose time you're actually devoting to the organization. That's first. Second, I think what we also have is, we call it celebrating performance, which is nothing but for everything good that you do, whether it's peers, subordinates, or seniors, can send you an online citation with certain points. Now, those points have a value, and you could choose what you want to buy with that. So it's not something that you would say, well, here is one trophy, or here is one watch. Rather, you can choose what you want it to be, right? So I think what we're really doing is focus on experience and focus on putting the empowerment back and letting teams and the teams decide who need to be rewarded and awarded, rather than HR or some policy police sitting somewhere and deciding who needs to be recognized, right? So on that note,
we have time for exactly one more question.
One more
we've
question.
Got a couple of prizes to give away for the questioners, but we'll stop with that one.
One more question.
We're behind schedule. Where's the catch box? Could you just give it to
Okay, my question is, I'm Sanket Kadam from Huawei Telecommunications. From the telecom, of course, last year was a very tough time for the telecom industry. My question is, during a toughest time when job security is the biggest concern for employees, what is the best focus on employee engagement? What is the right thing the organization should do at this point of time?
CSR. It's a great glue, I'm telling you. It has worked for us very beautifully. Apart from that, I think I take the point, of having the family included. So a lot of time that stickiness comes, or, a lot of empathy gets generated when you are involving the family together. And I think that also works pretty well.
So I'm going to quickly wrap. I'm sorry, but I'm going to have to wrap. I'm getting thrown off. But I think I'm going to say something which hopefully will respond to your question, right? I think if you look at across the spectrum of things that we have talked about, I think whilst the generations have changed, and the generations that are coming into the workforce have been shaped by the macroeconomic or social situation that they've all been brought up, and therefore they behave in a particular manner. But I think the basics really don't change, is what we are all agreeing. At the heart of all of this, people want to know that they are secure and are being cared for. That's the first premise. When in an organization you are secure and being taken care of, and if you cannot be, you are being transparent about it, right? Leadership needs to be honest and transparent, saying, guys, deal with it. Nobody's a kid now, right? Everybody understands what the market is and the market forces are. So as far as the organization is transparent, its intention is very clear, and you can let people know and feel secure and be taken care of. Then people can focus on really contributing and adding value. When people can contribute, they can be creative. When they are creative, they can be innovative. When they're innovative, you will start to see differentiated capabilities in the organization. When you have differentiated capabilities in the organization, your consumers are going to start to experience that. When your consumers and clients start to experience that, then obviously you're going to get more market share. And if you get more market share, then you have more power, your stock price is doing well, you have more money in your hands that you should possibly plow back into your employees again. So it's a cycle of sorts, but I think at the basics really don't change. On that note, I want to take the opportunity to thank my panelists for a fabulous conversation, and thank you for being such a lovely audience. We have to do the mandatory panel photograph, right? So we're going to all take our poses for a minute.
Yes, we'd also like to give gifts from Good Era to both the people who asked us questions. Could you go and give it to them? They're both one behind each other right at the moment. Yeah. How about a big round?